Welcome to the Blades and Bloodlines podcast. I'm Aidan, a 7th generation barber, carrying on my family's legacy in our 3rd generation shop, a fixture in our community since 1978. This podcast is about more than cuts and trims. It's about connecting with people who have incredible stories, fascinating careers, and vital perspectives to share. Every episode encapsulates an authentic barbershop experience, a bastion of free speech, likes of which you've never seen, and flows into a meaningful conversation, one that might just change how you see the world. So pull up a chair, sharpen your mind, and join the conversation. And remember, soon you won't be able to say anything. So while you have the opportunity to say something, say something. Mathew Cabrera, you're an esteemed sports scientist, I believe, in your field. We actually go way back, you and I. We go back a ways, back to when we were first starting our respective careers. But without further ado, before we jump in, just give us all a little bit of a brief rundown of what it is you do, what your accolades are, and what it is you're into, and what you're here to talk about today.
All right, so my name's Matt. I'm a strength and conditioning coach and a sports scientist. I'm based here on the Northern Beaches, and I've been doing this for pretty much close to 10 years now. I've kind of worked predominantly with field-based athletes. So field-based is AFL, rugby union, football. And over this period of time, I've kind of worked in the private sector. I've worked in high school strength and conditioning. I've had a bit of a spell within the professional space. But yeah, now I've kind of transitioned into a bit more of the academia space. I'm now involved in the teaching of strength and conditioning.
More of the theory.
And the theory and, passing the knowledge on to the next generation of students and practitioners. Whilst at the same time still staying involved in the NPL, working in semi-professional football now.
Well, no one really just starts this journey organically like that. You obviously must have been an athlete yourself in the beginning.
Yes.
You played football at a high level, I understand?
Yeah. So I had a bit of experience playing NPL football and futsal myself as an athlete way back in the day. And, as a footballer, I think the reason why I transitioned into strength conditioning sports science was I had a passion about human physiology, and I had a passion about learning how to become a better physical performer. And I was really intrigued with, I always favoured the technical side of being a football player, the passing, the shooting, the skill acquisition. But I wanted to be able to merge how can I better perform physically and put that together with the technical to become an all-rounder, better athlete. And that's why I went down that journey through that education process, and now I'm here.
And a lot of people don't actually. A lot of people will just rely on their club's physio or whoever it is that they're seeing to give them that advice. But when you're actually done the research yourself and you can apply it to yourself, all of a sudden I feel like it just gives you this mad edge. Yeah. Because seeing my sister, who's also an NPL footballer, she got 2 people that she sees. One is a sports masseuse that we share. Yep. That's been on this show before. And the other one's the club physio. Okay. And they constantly, because I'm always there for the conversations, are having very different kind of things. Right. Because I understand if you're doing physio or coaching for a team, it kind of has to be one size fits all. Yeah. But if you're self-taught and self-educated, then all of a sudden the glove just fits your hand. Yeah. And you know exactly how to apply it to yourself. Yeah, and make decisions, and yes, of course, you can make informed decisions going forward, yes. 100%. But let's rewind and go down memory road just for the beginning. Yeah. So what were you doing in 2016, 17, 18? Where were you working? 2016, I was working at a pub in Manly. I was having fun there, working hard while studying and finishing, just getting started with my career within coaching and sports science and whatnot. So still within the education pathway. But I was working at a pub, and that's where I met you. And that's where the relationship took off. Yeah, that's right. From there, I was working the doors actually at this pub in Manly. I'm just gonna say it, Manly Wharf Bar, and that was a long time ago now. Yeah, it was. And Maddie, the reason why I have such respect for you is because in the early days of our career, me cutting hair, you with your sporting, we used to do discounted haircuts for discounted PT sessions. And that's exactly how we tried to build each other up. So you've been with me intermittently and now for a little while. Yep. And I've been following your journey as well. Yep. And that's what these episodes are about today. This is very special, people that are near and dear to me. Yep. But without further ado now, so which team, you're working in the NPL now. Yep.
Are there any other teams or schools you're with as well, or are you kind of sticking with one group?
Yeah, so at the moment this year, I'm just with the NPL club, and I'm also working within the academia space, now getting involved in teaching.
Yep.
So yeah, like, I mean, this season, everything's all is going well. I can't believe we're already in round 4 this, we're in April now. So yeah, the season's going well. The physical shape of the players, everyone's in good shape. We haven't had many injuries, if not any so far. And if we had, we've been able to manage it really well. And yeah, it's been I'm at a really good club with a really good support staff and group of coaches that we all work together really well, and we all respect each other's positions and roles within the team.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty happy, mate.
Do you ever feel any of the pressure of when you're training the team? Does any of that pressure come back to you? As in, if they're not performing or they're not up to scratch, everyone points the finger at Matt and says, well, you know, they're all kind of they're all leading off him.
Yeah.
So do you feel a bit of pressure from that, or do they really just give you their blessing to really just do your thing?
Yeah.
Especially since it's early days.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question because within sports science and S&C, I think those coaches or practitioners can be in the highlight or the spotlight for, you know, high frequency injuries within the team or poor fitness performance. But I'm really thankful with the club that I'm at the moment that the coaching staff and everyone around me believe in what I do and the processes that I have. So I'm able to go out and do what I need to do for the players and deliver certain sessions and different types of sessions, and know that I've got full trust and backing from them. But yeah, there's still always pressure. I'll be watching the game on match day, and you always have a bit of butterflies knowing, you know, like I've had a part to play within the week here to help
especially if you win.
Yeah,
or
and
one,
when we win,
or
it's
one
great.
of your players is clocking up X amount of Ks, which is impressive. Because I know that that NPL clubs actively track that really well.
We do.
But do you, obviously being an ex-footballer yourself, do you see some things that on the pitch the girls are doing and think, man, like, should I go up to coach and say we should try this, or do you just very much stay in your lane? Or can you get
tactically? You're talking football tactically?
Can you get involved in the football, or are they just like, nah, Matty, in your lane, you're the fitness guy?
Yeah, I think because I have background as a football player, I can have a little bit of a say.
It's respected.
It's respected. My opinion would be, and it is respected when I bring up something about football. But mind you, I try not to bring it up too often because
of course not.
I let them take the reins. They're the ones who are more like maybe qualified or educated or more experienced with football tactical knowledge than I am. So, you know, if I see something, I'll highlight it. But yeah, I try not to do it too much. But it's interesting you say that because in my past teams that I've worked for, I've been in the rugby union space, and like, you've known me for years, and I'm a football person, like 100%. And I've worked in AFL and rugby union where, like, the language of the sport wasn't, you know, first nature to me. I had to learn how to talk rugby, had to learn how to talk AFL. So,
well, it's different talking to a rugby player than to a soccer player.
Yeah, but even the coaching stuff, like knowing the certain plays, knowing how, you know, bodies move in certain areas on the pitch, and, you know, I felt less confident in those sporting environments, having to be able to communicate with the coach. But now I'm back in football. You know, this is where I kind of belong, and I love it. And
you're in your element.
I'm in my element, yeah.
But then with the whole rugby, soccer, AFL thing, I know AFL and soccer would be similar in a sense that that's lots of running.
Yep.
But you'd think that it's transferable. The information, fitness is fitness, and drills are drills.
Yep.
But did you kind of find that, man, you had to relearn? This is rugby. Wow, this isn't football. So did you have to then brush up on your skills, look into rugby a little bit more?
Yeah.
Because you think to yourself, all right, I'm very good at training with football, but now I'm training rugby, now I'm training AFL. So you kind of think to yourself, all right, my approach is just completely different.
Yeah.
But there are similar aspects to it, but it's different.
Yes.
So how much of it was just the same?
Yeah, I think before I go into any sport that I work with, I start off with a bit of a needs analysis. So a needs analysis is where I kind of break down what are the physical requirements that you need to have in order to be successful in this sport. And, you know, that includes strength, power, speed, the conditioning or the running demands, how much high-speed running meters certain athletes cover. The biggest difference, obviously, between rugby union and football is the element of contact and tackling. It's like, you know, that needs to be taken into consideration when you're training rugby union athletes. You need to build individuals who have a lot of mass and strength to be able to handle collision. And you also need to be able to train contact collision work as well. So in football, we don't really have to do that. And what I mean by that is, contact conditioning is like ground-based wrestling, isometric contractions and squeezes on your other players, and combining that with running shuttle drills, for example, is something that's very different to football, where we don't have to touch on that at all.
100%. And I was thinking to myself as well, so apart from all the professional, semi-professional sports you're in, the original thing that you were doing was PT. But PT, as we know now, is this, well, to me anyway, from what I've seen, this ultra-saturated thing now where a lot of people that do PT are just putting in a great amount of effort to kind of make themselves stand out from others. So when you were starting in PT, were you, okay, I'll start with doing maybe a lot more sports-based stuff, sprinting, mechanics and that, or was it very much just your run-of-the-mill PT stuff to start with? Because I know it's a very hard thing to break into.
Yeah. I think when I first started, I got into PT when I finished my second year at uni, and then I'm really thankful of doing that because I was just training general population clientele. Yeah. And general population are just like your everyday, your mums and dads, your people that want to put on muscle, lose a bit of body fat, and I'm grateful I went and started that because that really helped me apply the theoretical knowledge and then start, actually practicing it.
It's starting in the trenches, essentially.
Starting in the trenches and learning how to communicate with people, learning how to coach is such like a big, it's what you don't learn in educational spaces, right? Like you got to actually go out in the field and practice talking to people, teaching people how to move. So the fact that I made that decision and merged the two together at the same time, I think it's really helped my development overall. Getting to this stage now, I can't believe it's only been 10 years.
Yeah, it's a long time.
It's a while. That I feel I've looked back and I'm like, I've built a really good communication and coaching foundation by starting out personal training, the everyday person.
It's nearly about the same amount of time I've been doing my
profession. About the same,
about 10 years. And I find in little ways, in little subtle ways, that PTing everyday people and cutting hair and then transitioning to actual specific angles of what you do is very similar. Because I'm thinking, all right, so if someone's doing PT, you've got people who in your heart of hearts are not going to make any progress. And this is where you get to kind of the more, I guess, satirical part of personal training, where I've seen at some of the bigger commercial gyms that I've been at back in my day that, the PT guy's like, all right, another one. He checks the watch. All right, that's another one. Good. Have a break. Looking around, just so like, God, get me out of here.
Yeah.
But was that a reality for you, or do you think you kind of maybe got a bit lucky that everyone that you worked with more or less wanted to be there, and you were like, okay, they're going to get something out of it, not just here's Big Jenny again, who's going to go home and comfort eat, and I know she will. But oh well.
Yeah, I think maybe to answer that question, a bit of a combination of both. I've had, when I first started, I got exposed to some really great people, really great clients. But I've definitely had my fair share within that private personal training space that I've had individuals that, they are paying to be there, but they're not purely motivated, like perhaps training a semi-professional elite athlete might be. So I think it's part of the coach to be adaptable and being good at trying to communicate and build buy-in with the individual. Be like, okay, what are you here for? What do you really want to achieve? What does training for an hour with me every week really mean to you? How's that going to change your life?
100%.
So getting to understand that and then working with them to devise an exercise plan, I think is key because, yes, I might have the knowledge to give you the exercise plan, but if you don't buy into it and you don't believe in it, or you're kind of not motivated to do it, you're not going to do it and you're not going to get results.
Absolutely.
So that's a skill set in itself. And I think that goes back to the point I made about earlier about getting started back in the trenches, actually coaching as soon as possible, was it helped with me personally to develop that skill set, to communicate and get a better understanding of individuals, and then put that together with the exercise plan. And I found that helped.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But how did networking as well? I know that's important.
Oh, true, yeah.
Because even for me, with the podcasting, with the barbershop, the barbershop, it's quite simple. Do good work, have a business card.
Yep.
you had a good interaction with someone, mate, boom, here, you text me whenever you need me again, and
Yeah.
I'll be here for you.
Yeah.
But then, with the podcast, maybe comes the same kind of thing with PT, is the shameless self-promoting.
Yeah.
Here, I'll give you 10% off if you promote this for me, please follow it all. Because unfortunately, it's the only way you're going to get people to come and see you. You need to kind of get the ball rolling, people talking about you.
Yeah.
So having said that though, do you think you were very fortuitous in the sense that you met the right people at the right time? Because I know that you've worked under some pretty, with some guys that have been at the Marlins and that were quite prominent or in the area. Because are you still in J Train's gym, or you've moved out of there?
No, I do private, all my private services in Brookvale through that space. Yeah. And I'm still there, get exposed to some of the rugby players. I'm not training many rugby union players at the moment privately. I've only got one. I'm kind of dealing with a lot more of like the footballers, and then a couple of like long endurance runners as well, which is kind of starting to pick up interestingly, starting to get a bit more marathon or half marathon participants come to see me to train.
Is that sprint mechanics then?
Not quite, but there is a bit of a transfer to like the running postures we see in sprinting into kind of longer endurance, steady state kind of velocities. There is a bit of sprint tech that I do incorporate within their programs, but it's for the purpose of developing, I guess, neuromuscular power, which is something that I think a lot of endurance athletes tend to neglect because they're thinking about sustaining effort for a long period of time. But if they can actually work on their neuromuscular power specific to positions of running, they'd improve their efficiency and their ability to utilize energy during the running stride and the running.
So what is it when an athlete comes to see you or football or anyone of that kind? What is it do you frequently see them doing wrong? Because if they come to you, they must already have some kind of background in it, because they're going to see a very well-educated trainer. But what do you see that they're getting wrong, especially with football, with sprinting, with movement, with agility? You think a part of it is they just don't do enough of it?
That's a really good question. What do people do wrong? What do I think? I think the effort isn't the wrong thing. I think it may be too much effort and trying to do too much. And not perhaps laying out their weekly training plan to best suit to perform on the weekend. So that's probably the biggest thing that I see that a lot of people, like the mistakes that they make, is that they're setting themselves up to failure because they're trying to train too hard and too much throughout the week. That by the time they get to game day on the weekend, they're not in a position where they're able to physically perform at their best. So it's more about the structuring and the manipulation of certain sessions and exercises across the whole week. Is what I see the most, and I think that I can provide the most value, is being that person that can provide the structure, provide the layout, so that when you get to game day, that's the most important day on the whole week. Everything else is making sure that is at your best.
Absolutely. And then shifting over to the other hand with the general population, what are they doing wrong?
Maybe not enough.
They're not doing enough. It's the complete opposite.
It could be the complete opposite. So talking about not doing enough, like an elite athlete, or a semi-professional one at that as well, would be training, most days of the week. And they'd be getting enough physical activity to sustain like their general health, obviously, because they're competing and they're trying to perform. It's a different focus. But then when you have your general population, it's about actually not doing enough throughout the week. The minimum recommended guidelines here in Australia for exercise are around 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity.
Is that what they reckon?
Yes, 150 minutes a week. And then that can be changed based off the intensity. So if it goes up to vigorous, the time will be reduced because it's at a higher intensity. So, but generally speaking, we should be aiming for around 150 minutes. And, even thinking about your own exercise throughout the week, do you think you'd hit, 150 minutes per week?
Well, I always think in my head that I'm special and different to everyone else. I've got a lot of, and I mean it, not in a funny way or a stronzo way, but I say like in the thing that me, I've got a chronic illness that I'm dealing with that I've recently implemented carnivore to help me alleviate, which for those of there that wanted to try carnivore, it has done wonders for me so far. Absolutely. I'm just amazed at the amount of energy you get from just eating meat. But also having said that though, I play football too. So I do a field session on Wednesday, play however many minutes, on Saturdays, and then during the week, honestly, it's just bodybuilding. It's just a bit of arms. It's just aesthetic stuff.
Yep.
I wasn't sure if I was going to come back to football. Otherwise, I would have done more explosive squats and trap bar stuff. But at the end of the day, my job here kind of ruins my recovery. Mm-hmm. And I know my sister, who plays for Manly United in the NPL in the division that the team that you work with is in, she even says, I do leg sessions and I come to work and it just takes them forever to recover.
Sure.
Which I think is a great thing to get some light on is with your girls. How do you then deal with the girls that are working full time and they can't, or do you find a lot of them are just purely into football, there's no jobs?
Yeah.
So I know that's a hard thing to balance, especially if you're trying to go pro.
Yeah.
Women have to work too.
Yes.
Men don't always can kind of have the luxury of missing it.
Yeah.
Especially some NPL 1 men's are on some pretty good money.
Yeah.
Women's is different. That's
That's another great point that you raised, because there is a difference within, obviously, semi-professional male and female sports here in Australia. It's not just football. It applies to AFL and rugby league as well. Female athletes of that level, not earning as much, unfortunately. It's just the reality of how it is at the moment. And they need to be working to sustain, their lifestyle and their life, as 100%. Well as play football at a high level and train at a high level. So how do I take that into consideration? Well, it's really about load management. And one of the things that you mentioned before about at NPL level, we track and we have GPS analysis.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
And being a sports scientist, part of my role is to not only train people in the field or in the gym, but it's to make informed decisions based off the analysis through GPS and other training metrics.
Yeah.
Now with GPS, I utilize that to get an understanding of like the intensity of a match, the intensity of different training sessions throughout the week, and then making sure that we put together a plan every week that leads into the weekend's game that supports their ability to perform. So what I mean by that is perhaps, manipulating the training week ahead. Mm-hmm. If we've had 3 weeks of previous high training loads. Yeah. Or if on the weekend, we're playing Manly this week, it's probably going to be a tough game, I'll be honest. So we might have to regulate our training schedule next week, right? Knowing that we've just come off a week of quite high intensity outcomes in the game. So being on top of those quantitative markers, but also merging that. It's not just about the numbers. It's not just about, okay, yes, I knew you ran this much. I knew you covered, this amount of high speed meters or accel decel. It's more about merging the numbers with the subjective and qualitative elements as well. So getting to know the athletes, utilizing questionnaires like, how's your stress out of 5, how's your energy levels, how are you today? Getting to know the athletes on a, not a deep level, but more than just a number level.
Deep enough.
I
mean, they have to be able to come to you for all sorts of things. I mean, for example, with women's, when you've got ovulations, and maybe one of them feel like because of that, they're not up to what you've set. Yep. In women's, is that then very much more of a fact that, well, everyone in the team does it. Yep. So if Sally can push through her cycles and you can't, well then sorry, or is it very, because I feel like that's a very funny thing for men to deal with. I kind of would think in women's sports maybe there'd be like a female liaison in case maybe the bloke in your position would be a little bit uncomfortable talking about it. How do you navigate that? I've always found that quite interesting. I know like with men,
don't have to consider it.
Well, they don't have to consider it, but for example, if there's 2 guys there with 2 kids, or there's 2 guys there with 2 full-time jobs, but he can pull it off, but you're struggling, well, hey man, like we've all got the same thing here. We all have to be able to pull through. Because I've always heard that there's this funny little thing with women, whereas, what was my missus saying? She was saying at her work, it's not particularly cool, lack of a better words, to say, hey, I have to chuck a sickie today because I'm too bloated, I'm not feeling well. Right. It's like, hey, we all go through this. We're all feeling bloated. What makes you so special that you can't do the work? So how is it navigating that? Do you have those conversations too?
I think when I take female athletes or even female general population clients, I always bring up the topic of menstruation, and I want them to feel comfortable to be able to talk to me about it and communicate and be open and honest. Because I know that there's going to be periods throughout the month where performance might fluctuate based off the experience, the symptoms that they're experiencing from that situation, and getting to know your athletes and clients better and understanding when that occurs, knowing when to push them and when to maybe pull back. And everyone's different. Sometimes some female athletes don't have any symptoms and you can push them hard, but sometimes they have heavy symptoms and you have to be a little bit more considerate about how hard you push intensity in particular sessions. So how do I navigate that with a group of 30 athletes all at once in the same team where there's, so many different, cycles happening at one time? So the way I navigate it is by allowing the athletes to decide on the level of intensity that they want to train at within the session. So I'm a big believer of creating self-efficacy, right? So you mentioned about, being educated, having an understanding and making decisions for yourself.
Yeah.
I provide a training session or a training stimulus to get a certain objective, all right? And then within that objective, I give them a range.
Yeah.
All right. And within this range, whether it's meters or whether it's time, you've got to hit X amount of meters in time or certain distance in time. You can choose based on how you feel today.
Yeah. Okay.
Simple.
Yeah.
That is my personal approach to it.
That's your approach.
It takes into consideration the GPS analysis I do through the week. It takes into consideration a bit of their wellness questionnaire. And then on top of that, they can then decide in that moment how they feel, if they want to push or pull back.
Okay, nice. Very interesting.
So I can give you an example.
Yeah,
so, if we're having to hit 100 meters every minute on the minute in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
All right. We are working at a certain velocity, which might be around 4.4 to 5.2-ish meters per second, which is relatively fast for female football. So instead of hitting 100 meters in 20 seconds, I might say this week, or if you're not feeling 100%, you can hit it in 22 or 24. All right. Gold standard 20. If you're feeling okay, hit it in 22. If you're not feeling great, if you hit it in 24, that's okay.
But it can't be lower than that.
Can't be lower than that.
You have to stay at a standard,
Yes.
Otherwise positions are in jeopardy.
Yeah, positions are in jeopardy, but also the level of intensity will drop too much that it's like, okay, now you're not training hard enough. You still need to train hard, but I understand that you don't have to push very hard.
Yeah.
We can just scale it back a bit.
It does. It's a real funny thing. I've been watching women's football my whole life, and I know that your career is very much more than women's football, but it's just what it's very focused on now.
Yeah.
Or just about majority of my sisters had all played rep, well, two of them really, had played rep football, and I just went my whole early childhood going out to Gladesville, going out here, going out there, following them all over Sydney to watch them play.
Yeah.
And now watching my own sister play it at what's essentially the second division, like it's still a very good women's level.
Yeah, for sure.
In Australia,
Yeah.
it just, from the men's perspective, it doesn't look like, no offense to the girls, that it is as like physical and as much running as in men's.
Okay.
Because I watch it and you kind of think, oh, they could be doing so much better, or what's that pass? There's a lot more mistakes and a lot. And I look at that and I think to myself, but it's really not. It's exactly what suits their biology, their physiology.
Yep.
And it's very difficult to obviously go from men's to watching women's.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we've got to be a bit more aware of is the distinction. It's really not the same. You can only push females so much. They can only push themselves so much.
Yep.
I guess there's only so much muscle they can put on. They've got a lot more other things going with them. So do you have a preference then working with men or with women?
Not really. I don't have a preference.
You don't mind?
No. And I've worked with male rugby union athletes at a good level and male AFL athletes at maybe the same level as NPL, right? And, I actually love working with both. And for me, it doesn't matter. For me, training is still relative. So you just mentioned, okay, they're running at a certain speed. Oh, you think they can run faster, but then you think, oh no, like this is relative to their physiology and the demands that they can
Absolutely.
handle, right?
I don't want any crazy women athlete to take that the wrong way.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the genders do have limitations.
Yeah, and there's
to what they can
differences between men and women just through normal physiology. And, to me, it doesn't make a difference because when I prescribe certain training interventions, I'm basing it off relative percentage intensity.
Yeah.
So, everyone knows about 1RMs in the gym, right? A 1RM of 100 kilos, we're going to lift at 80%, we're going to lift 80 kilos, right? But if a female athlete's 1RM is, 50 kilos, just throwing hypothetical numbers here.
Yep.
80% might be 40 or 45 kilos or something like that. So even though the male is squatting 80 and the female is squatting 40, they're still working as hard as each other.
100%.
All right. Just because the guy has more absolute load, it doesn't mean that he's working harder. They're working the exact same.
100%.
So,
and you want to highlight the differences because unless some, you get some nutcase out there that goes, no, they're even.
Yeah,
they can do this. I'm sure you can, but at the end of the day, you heard it here from the professionals.
And that comes back to the same point that I mentioned about the running speed. I just gave an example of certain running velocities. That applies with our GPS analysis as well. I've manipulated the settings on our current GPS units to sit with the demands and the running speeds of female athletes. And I've got that through literature, a bit of a combination of literature and evidence that's there about the thresholds of running in football, but then also through the testing that I've done on our athletes, putting those two things together to make sure that it's as accurate as possible for them.
And one of the big puzzles that I've been thinking of that I think gets skipped a lot because it's very broad and it can't be all prescribed to one person is the puzzle piece of nutrition.
Oh, yeah.
Now, nutrition's a big one.
It is.
Very, very, very different to everyone. It'd be different from a footballer to a rugby player to this or that, to whatever. So I use myself as an example again. Carnivore, so I'm on no carbs.
Yeah.
But I have no problem with energy.
Sure.
I'm going nuts with it. I can go all day. But with the women there or with the people you train in general, do you also then, as a part of your service to them, if they said to you, Maddie, I'm struggling with eating, where do you draw your knowledge from in terms of what's the best way to source carbs? What's the best way to source proteins? You believe in carb cycling and breaking down the proteins, the 20%, 30%, all the real bodybuilder jargon with how to break down macronutrients.
Yep.
So where do you come in with your expertise then?
Okay, so first of all, through my education process, I've only dabbled in a very small part of nutrition.
Yeah.
It's not part of my degree of what I've learned officially. I've just learned it in parts. So I always kind of set the disclaimer and say, look, I'm not a nutritionist or dietitian. Any proper, solid nutrition advice, go to someone who's more educated and knows about it than me. However, what I do say is that I think when training athletic individuals, let's just use the example of football or field-based sports, my personal opinion about it is to ensure they're eating a balanced diet. And what I mean by that is a balance of macro and micronutrients.
Yeah.
So
what's the difference quickly between macro and micro for those that wouldn't know?
Yep. So a macronutrient just refers to like a protein, a carbohydrate, and a fat source.
Yep.
And then your micronutrients just refer to any vitamins and minerals.
Right.
Okay.
Perfect.
So you want to have a balanced approach across all macros and micros, but making sure that we're fueling to perform. All right. So making sure you're getting enough energy through your food to support your ability to play your sport and perform.
Yeah.
But then also we need to make sure we're getting enough food to support recovery. All right. So what is your EPOC? So EPOC refers to exercise post oxygen consumption.
Okay.
So different levels of exercise intensity will have a different level of EPOC.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're exercising at a high intensity, your EPOC or post exercise oxygen consumption will be very high.
Okay.
Whereas if it's low intensity, your oxygen consumption post-exercise will be low because it's not as hard.
Right.
Okay. So we need to fuel to perform. We need to fuel to recover depending on how intense your exercise was. And then we also need to fuel to support our daily metabolic functions.
Okay.
Just to stand up and breathe and sit down and, do work.
Yeah.
So 3 things we need to factor. Nutrition needs to ensure that we're supporting all those aspects. And to get detailed advice, that's when I suggest you go see a professional regarding that matter. But yeah, having carbohydrates, ensuring you're getting enough going into competition, going into game day, a combination of low to high GI forms of carbohydrates.
Like glycemic index ones.
Yep.
So a higher one versus a lower one would be suited best when between the two.
So I'd opt for higher GI forms of carbohydrates closer to like just before or during competition.
So is high GI more sweet potatoes or is that low?
I think sweet potato is more of a moderate to
one,
low.
Okay. So when you're like bread and all those other carbohydrates, pasta, because I know pasta is a very popular carbo load the night before choice.
Yep.
I know that's the one my family's always used.
Yeah, great
one.
one.
It's the easiest.
Yep.
But for me personally, I always felt sluggish. So for example, I was telling Nick just before we were starting, before I got on carnivore, before my match days, the night before, I'd be having pizza.
Sure.
And this, that, and whatever, a bit of pizza, bit of this, bit of that. But I'd wake up the next morning, I'd feel okay. I wouldn't be too bloated, but I would just have a feeling of lethargy in general.
Yeah.
Still would feel pretty heavy. And now I always bring it back to carnivore because this is my only basis of comparison, because I've only ever had my traditional normal lifestyle meals until I started doing this.
Yeah.
There's just none of it. It's just pure clarity, no bloating, pretty regular bowel movements. Whereas for me with the cheese and with the pizza, man, I'd be praying that I could go to the bathroom before my game, because there's no way I'm going there.
Yeah.
The clubhouse
You
toilet, I
don't
couldn't
want to let
do
one
it.
rip in the clubhouse toilet.
No, and I also don't want to be carrying 2 extra kilos while I'm playing
fair.
either.
Fair
as
enough.
well.
Yeah.
So with the carbs and stuff, I've always been looking, and social media is a very big thing now. You kind of have to be on social media now, don't you? Especially in your role. Otherwise, you're just not marketable. People need to be able to find you. But there is a lot of influencers. I don't really like that word. They're not all influencers. I think influencers is definitely more of the people that are trying to sell a product. That's what you're influencing the market to adapt a product. But you're not an influencer, even if you were certified with 1 million followers. You're just trying to give people education. And so there is a lot of stuff out there about insulin in the morning being spiked and crashing. Do you take that into account? I know you said you don't have a nutrition background, but surely that would be still something that you would take into account. Insulin crashes.
Yeah.
All those different things. I know for me, it's been the case. You have carb swirling in the morning, you crash. Same with coffee, 2 hours prior. You got to at least be awake for 90 minutes before you have coffee.
Yeah. I think to summarize everything about nutrition, and that point you made about, I felt sluggish having carbohydrates the night before and I just didn't feel good on game day. Like, at the end of the day, like, everyone has individual preferences. We all have different bodies. We all handle different amounts of levels of carbohydrates, certain amounts of food. We all have different digestion rates. It really comes down to what best suits you individually. And when you're at a good level of athlete, you'd want to say, by the time you've gotten to that level, that you've developed a routine or developed an understanding of your own individual preferences for nutrition, and you're just rinsing and repeating it because it works. Like, it's really common in endurance-based sports as well, like marathon running and triathlon, where, I wouldn't be opting to try a different form of carbohydrate gel or a different dinner before my competition race.
You find something that works.
You find something that works, that agrees with your gut, and that allows you to perform the next day, and you just stick with it. Because if you go making last-minute changes, you've just done a 12-month training intervention. You've eaten the same way for 12 months, but then you go into your marathon race with a change of shoes or a change of, certain carbohydrates or meal timing the day or the week of competition, and it's different and it doesn't agree with you, then you're done.
Forget about
Forget
it.
your 12-month training block. You just ruined your performance because you
Absolutely.
didn't stick to something that you knew that has worked for you in the past.
And what's the benefit as well, especially with marathon runners? I've cut the hair of lots of marathon runners or long distance participants in all those type of events. The use of, all right, so I'd say to them, I did the Spartan challenge, or I did this challenge, which is a very long endurance physical thing. And I said, you can have little bits to eat in between. And I said, well, what do you have? It's either peanut butter, eggs, or something that's a very, very quick, easy fat to break down. But then you say, for instance, peanut butter, well, fuck, unless it's an organic one, it's not too healthy, is it? There's vegetable oil and shit in there. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the best choice is the healthiest choice. When you're in the zone and your body is like, man, facing this crazy challenge of the Spartan challenge, for example, I don't think peanut butter is going to really do too much. Put your health things aside there. There is a time and place for everything. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And even with football too, do you kind of keep electrolytes, salts? Do you kind of try to promote that?
Yes.
If a girl tried to crack out, she was just absolutely dying, there's no more subs, and just said, Mum, go to the canteen and fucking get me a V, because, would you be like, no, you're going to crash after? Or is it just, in the heat of the moment, you have to do what you have to do?
Look, first of all, I probably wouldn't endorse or encourage taking V. Just
unless the show was sponsored by
Unless the show was sponsored,
in
of
which
course,
case
and
you
then
would
I'd
have
be,
to.
then I'd be saying, take as much V as you want. But no, I think, you're right. In the moment when you need to make decisions, the interpretation of having healthy foods or bad foods, like you're in competition environment, you need to physically perform. Fuel to perform, that can mean having Gatorade, which is really high in sugar, but you need that sugar in that moment to get you through the next half an hour.
Yeah.
Who cares if you have a, carbohydrate crash, an hour from then, right? You just need to perform for that next half an hour. So you take and utilize whatever nutrition intervention that is going to support you and has credibility to get you through that specific moment. So if that's peanut butter, like that endurance guy took, then that helps him to perform, then great.
Yeah, and I think the body really is an incredible being. I'll use myself again as an example because
You're a specimen, that's why.
I am a specimen. I pretty much went all of last football season playing every game with insomnia.
Oh, wow.
I wouldn't sleep the night before.
Wow.
Because I guess people who have family and friends who have been kind of following my journey in particular would know that with my autoimmune disease and everything like that, it led to a lot of things with the medication like insomnia, which I then had to use substances to kind of alleviate because I still had to work and train, which then led to a bit of substance abuse. Well, not abuse, I'd say more dependency.
Yep.
And that was pretty much medicinal marijuana to help just kind of get me out at night,
Sure.
which then just became a little puffs out of a pipe, which then became half a joint, which then became a whole joint, which then became 2 joints because I just built up such a tolerance to it.
Yeah.
But mind you, I'm not sitting on the couch playing video games. This is me trying to say, I need to get to sleep because I have to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
And this is the only way I can do it because I'm not taking Valium. I'm not taking anything like that.
Yeah.
And I remember we played a night game against Beacon Hill and I had not slept at all. That was actually one of the rare nights where I did smoke, but I couldn't sleep because it has this very funny thing where a lot of people who have used pot for a long time will say it exacerbates your mindset.
Yeah.
And my mindset was not good. So instead of it kind of putting me out and giving me a nice, you don't even get nice sleep because it suppresses REM sleep.
Yeah.
So you still wake up fucked. You've had deep sleep but no REM, so your body hasn't recovered. Your emotions haven't been registered or processed. So you wake up cranky, you're very snappy.
Yeah.
I used to find myself very snappy with clients.
Yeah.
But obviously for me, I know I'm in a professional trade. So what snappy would look like might just look like someone just being neutrally receptive to you.
You've never been snappy to me, so thank goodness.
I've been luckily sleeping quite well since you've been coming in. But having said that though, we played this night game and I just kind of said to one of my mates in the team, I said, man, look, I haven't slept at all. I play in a position that requires me to get up and come back at left back.
Yep.
So I really like attacking, but I also like defending. Always having a rugby background. If I can flatten some cunt, then I'll really take the chance to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm in a good position near the sideline, so there's nowhere for him to go.
Yep.
But having said that, I had my head in such a dark place and I scored that game and we won.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself then, the adrenaline in my body really came through for me when I needed it. So when you get people coming to you with injuries or any type of mental angst, because I know that I can barely sleep before games, I get excited. I've played my game yesterday, not having slept. I had to get stoned the night before because I just had these massive nerves.
Yeah.
Because I do take it that seriously.
Yeah.
I have in my head, I'm playing for a spot.
Yeah.
I have to be able to play well. I mean, we've got a big squad.
Yeah.
That's the way they said it's got to be. So I have to make an impact.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the angst just got to me.
The anxiety, performance anxiety.
And the only way that I could alleviate that, because it was either have a little bit of weed or I'm not going to sleep because I know my body.
Yeah.
Trying to get on top of that though, I still have my moments all the time. The medication sometimes still mucks around with you, but God willing, on carnivore, I'll be off medication for a while. And so when girls come to you with performance anxiety or they're a bit injured or they're a bit tired, do you just have to kind of assure them that your body is going to come through for you? You just have to trust in yourself.
Yeah, I think, look, as a strength and conditioning or sports scientist, we might portray many different roles on a weekly basis, including a psychologist, right?
As well.
So, my biggest thing is, be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
And then trust the process and trust the work that you've done.
Yeah.
I really try to embark and let the athletes know that I'm working with, that I'm giving my best to make you guys the best athletically, to be as robust, to be as physically prepared as possible to handle the demands of the sport, if not more prepared to handle the demands.
Because this is make or break for your career.
Yeah.
Women's, I feel like, isn't as cutthroat as men's. You know, I think with a male, if you're not in an academy or not in a team by 17, you can pretty much just kiss your dream goodbye. But women have probably a little bit more leeway in terms of you can even still be 21, 23 and still get there.
At this level, this is the pathway for them to break out of, you know, being a semi-professional athlete to becoming a full-time athlete. So, you know, there's a lot riding on the line for these. They're sacrificing a lot, you know, to be in their position, to be able to continue pushing for that dream. So yeah, I take, I guess, my role with very seriously to support their own development. And, you know, I guess I let them know, look, I'm giving my absolute best for you by delivering this particular program. We're staying on top of load management, you know, trust the process and trust the fact that you've done enough work. All right? Believe in yourself.
Believe in yourself, absolutely.
You know, and be kind to yourself, because we all have our periods throughout the week where, you know, energy might be low. You know, we've all experienced a gym session or a running session where we're like, oh, I just feel like crap or flat.
It's not black and white life, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. So just believe in yourself and know that, you know, if you go out there, everything's going to be okay.
100%. So. And then going back to just PT in general, training in general, the fitness industry in general, because even though that you are, in my opinion, in the upper echelons of training, you're not just telling Susie to do more bodyweight squats. You're there prepping athletes for the next level. A lot of those girls in your team, should they make it, you should shake your hand because you've got them there, really. And I think in a lot of teams and structures, just the amount of work it takes and people's knowledge to make it all come together. And you kind of think when you watch footy on TV and stuff that it's all just taken for granted, but really it's not. Where even when you're watching soccer, someone's injured, physio runs out, water guy runs out. And you just think, man, I'm just so grateful just to have that around me. A lot of people don't. But in the industry itself, like what are your pet peeves? What do you see on Instagram? What do you see on Facebook that just goes, ugh, this is just shitting all over my profession. I should be getting so much more, not more attention, but the work I'm doing is so good. But then on the other hand, you've got a guy that's just loud and is just spewing shit. And I'm sure a lot of it must kind of really like get under your skin, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're a very strong character with thick skin.
I hope that I'm a good character with thick skin that doesn't get annoyed by these things. But I'll answer this kind of in a long way.
Answer it however you like to answer.
So
got plenty of
just
time.
going back to that point about, you know, working in the semi-professional women's football space at the moment. It's a really important part of their respective careers. They either make it or they don't at this stage. And I'm really passionate about delivering the best sports science service to support their development. And arguably, I think I'm more passionate about working in the semi-pro space than I am being in the professional space, like in the A-League. Because by the time they've got to the A-League, all the hard work's done. They're just now maintaining that high level of performance and standard.
Probably dealing with a lot more characters there too, but a lot more divas.
Yeah, possibly. But they're already there.
But
you've got to maintain it. Training's still got to be very high quality to be able to maintain performance. But they're not on that journey to getting anywhere.
They're already...
Unless they want to progress to Matildas and the national team setup.
Yeah.
But semi-professional space, like, you know, it's a bit more working class. You know, they're working jobs.
It's grassroots.
It's a bit more...
As you said.
Yeah, a bit more grassroots and then making it to that next level. So I think I'm more passionate about, supporting anyone improving their performance, but supporting those level athletes, those female athletes, because they're at a really crucial point in their lives where they can make a difference. And you know, to be able to have that responsibility to help get them there is like a really great feeling as a practitioner. So then going into answering what frustrates me is that I'm not concerned about, you know, oh yeah, I do this great work, whatever, no one notices it. I don't really care if I get noticed or not, to be honest. What frustrates me about social media, for example, is there's people with very minimal, if not any, qualifications regarding training. And they're preaching certain methods or methodologies, and people are believing in it. And then when they believe in it, they might get short-term results and short-term success. But at the end of the day, we know being healthy and supporting long-term, you know, health, it's not just a quick fix. It's not just a cookie cutter, copy and paste. Oh, I did copied and paste this approach with this person. Now I'm going to do it to 1,000 other people. Like, everyone's different. Your nutrition intervention that you said, you can't eat carbohydrates before a game because it makes you feel bloated. That's great. That's your approach. That's what works for you. It's the same with training. So seeing people fall into the trap of a cookie cutter approach by someone who isn't formally educated to give this information.
Yeah.
And that frustrates me because I've seen it a few times before where people have gone down the rabbit hole of following bad advice, and it's worked for maybe 6 months, and yeah, it's great. Yeah, I'm doing so well. But then bang, drop off, and it's back to where they started. And that crushes me because I know that person could have utilized a different training approach or intervention, and they didn't.
Yeah.
Because if they utilized a different approach, they'd be up here instead of back to where they were.
Yeah.
That's what kills me. Is that they're getting affected. People deserve better service to improve their health and their life. And that's my opinion.
And that's why
what frustrates me.
You're there servicing that need. You're the one that's gonna obviously be separated from the rest of the trash, because you're just. And I've seen your gram. I actually quite enjoy watching your stories and your reels because it's just so wholesome.
Oh, thanks.
And that's what I think the world is missing. It's just wholesome content. It's not, you're there, you're doing it, but on anyone else's account, the person doing it would just be extra marketable because the tits are big.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And then I'd be looking at Matt's links and be like, oh, OnlyFans as well. Okay, I see what I see what he's done here.
Yeah.
You can have many talents. But having said that, then making or breaking a professional athlete, but even just someone wanting to get to that level. So if someone came to you and just said, Matty, I'm starting my journey. I want to eventually, because I know you don't want to give too much away without them obviously paying for the privilege of your knowledge.
Yeah.
But someone said to you, all right, because my sister, myself, before my games, she's given me a lot of good tips about activation. I got activation bands.
Okay.
I jump on YouTube and I follow someone that does activations like clams and all the different kind of shuttle walks with the band. And I feel like the difference in my groin is like incredible. My hip flexors. So how would you then recommend for someone warming up for a footy game? Activation, stretching, not stretching too much, not stretching enough, foam rolling. Is that as important as they say?
Okay, so this could be a potentially long answer here. So
it doesn't matter.
Okay, activation before football. Are we talking about football or just sport in general before you go out in the field to play a competition game? Or
the one that you can give the most credible advice on that's best for you. So that's football.
Okay,
for the footballers out there, listen up.
Okay, so activation, I think. Okay, first of all, stability, right? Mobility is supported by stability.
Yeah.
Okay. And in order to create a stable joint, right, we need to have muscles that are, obviously engaged to support the range of motion and movement through that joint.
Yeah.
Now, the purpose of activation exercises is to, I guess, isolate those specific muscle groups that support stability of joints.
Yeah.
And, I think with, warm-up preparation for football, I think it's gone down a little bit too far of a rabbit hole of too much activation. And this is a controversial topic because activation's done very frequently in NPL level, utilizing the mini bands beforehand, clamshells, hip flexor raises, all those things with a mini band. And don't get me wrong, they have their place, but a proper warm-up principle is very simple and it should go from a low to high intensity of the activity that you're about to perform.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm about to go play football and launch 100 shots or do 1,000 kicks in a game, I need to make sure as a part of my warm-up routine, I've got some passing, I've got some kicking, starting off at low intensity or shorter distances and then increasing the contraction, velocity and force output and impulse as I've done my repetition in my work. So going from low to high.
But that is, before you continue, a football principle in general. Because I remember watching one of the last World Cups. I think when England brought on penalty takers. I guess in the Euro in Italy. And they lost. And part of the biggest thing was they had put on players that were cold all game.
Right.
And had not played all game. To take penalties just because they were better penalty takers. And a bit of the thing I was reading into after that was they just come off the bench. I guess in a sense their touches weren't warm. Is that a thing as well? Does that play into account?
Yeah, absolutely. Adaptation with training, specific adaptations of the imposed demands is a principle that I use when prescribing exercise. But the same principle applies, specific preparation for warm-up. So the activity you're about to do, the same principle applies with straight line running or change of direction for football. I start off with low intensity linear running, and then I start increasing the velocity and the intensity of my runs before getting onto the pitch.
Yeah.
With the change of direction, I might go from like a short angle change, and then might increasing to a 180 degree cut. Right, so you start low intensity accel decel change into high intensity to get you ready for the game. So a good warm up encompasses doing the motions and the activities that are performed in the game.
Yep.
They include straight line running, accel decel, change of direction, and passing and kicking.
Yep.
Right, if you incorporate all those things in a manner that starts from low, then gets you to high intensity, then you're ready to play your sport.
Yep.
Now, with the whole activation concept, that's really come through from this theory called post-activation performance enhancement, so PAPE. Okay, and that's come from a more clinical exercise prescription space, or sports medicine world, and that's kind of gotten into football. When we come back to that point about stability, mobility is driven by stability, trying to make sure certain joints are stable.
Yep.
Right, we're doing these isolated hip flexor or lateral hip movements to make your hips feel better, to then go and do those exercises. Now, each to their own. If someone needs to do that to help them feel that their hips are looser so then they can feel more stable to then run and change direction, then it should be a part of your warm-up.
Okay.
Because it feels good for you, right? But at the same time, we don't want to be spending half an hour doing that.
Yep.
Because that's starting to develop, in my opinion, a bit of a fragile approach to playing football.
Okay.
Remember when you're a kid and you just walk out your front door and you start running around at 100 miles per hour?
In the middle of winter at 8:30 in the morning.
Right?
Yeah.
So I know as we get older, things change, but we don't have to have this mentality where I have to do activation band exercises for half an hour before I can even touch the ball.
No.
Yeah. Like, we don't have to do that.
No,
Just
of course.
gradually increase the intensity of playing with the ball and running, and then that's a proper warm-up.
Some rules are hard and fast, but others are quite malleable. They're
Yes.
not, you don't always, like for me, I remember just when my cousins came up from Victoria, we went down to Cromer to shoot.
Yep.
And I was playing soccer that season, and we were shooting, but then all of a sudden my left quad was just pulled.
Okay.
And it just messed with me for the next couple of weeks.
But did you shoot high intensity straight away, or did you do a couple of lighter passes and build your shot intensity up over time?
Let me ask you what you think.
Yeah, you probably shot 100% in the first shot.
As if I was going to... my cousin I hadn't seen in a few years going to start with some passing. It's going to hit the goal.
Yeah, hit the goal straight away.
But then Tegan goes... my sister, the footballer Tegan, goes, well, you didn't activate.
Yeah.
And even her partner that plays NPL, in the NPL, but lower NPL 3,
Okay.
even goes, I said, no, Pete, go have some shots. Let's go. I'll go keeper. Or just cross them into me. He goes, I haven't activated. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Don't want to get injured.
Yeah.
Do you think that was maybe a pretty decent approach? Or it's like, come on, man, just shoot the goals? I guess
I don't want to diss on the
it's all
guy.
up to him.
But
Disrespect him.
No. It's like he's made an informed decision because he wants to save himself for football and the rest of the week.
I've
and
always
his
been
training.
about informed consent.
But I guess if I was in his position, if someone wants to do that, maybe be like, spend a couple minutes doing, a few lighter passes or lighter crosses before you get into your big cross or your big shot. But if that works for him to have to activate beforehand, then that's his decision that he needs to follow through and stick with. If he feels that works for him. I might add on to the point about how activation's gotten into football. I think coming from that sports medicine background or from physiotherapy, where don't get me wrong, PAPE is very effective for, I guess, we spoke about trying to improve stability of joints. It's a great way of part whole method practice.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is when we play football, really simple example, I'm passing the ball 2 meters to you, right? And then I do that for a couple minutes, and then I do a drill, which is now passing the ball in possession.
Yeah.
So I've isolated passing as a skill just to refine my touch, and then now I'm going to apply that in a more chaotic environment. There's players here, there's players there, you're running this way, and I have to pass the ball. So there's that continuum of control to chaos.
Yeah.
Now, with warm-up principles and PAPE, that's really effective in rehabilitation environments where someone's coming back from a certain injury and then they lack stability or they lack neuromuscular control through their joints or at a particular joint. And then we need to teach them how to utilize the muscles in that area, right, first before going into something more complex.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example in the gym environment so everyone can understand because it's quite easier. Let's say someone has, chronic back issues and they lack stability and control in their lumbopelvic area, so around their lower back and their hips. So we might isolate that area with some hip flexion-based banded exercises. We could do supine, lying on your back glute bridge with a foam roller squeezed in with your knees to support the co-contractions of the adductors and the glute max. So we're doing the movement of hip extension and hip flexion in isolation. That comes back to the whole point of passing the ball 2 meters, back and forth, back and forth.
It's incredible how just one little motion like that can have all these mechanics.
Yeah, and then you transfer that hip extension element that you're isolating then into the deadlift, then into the squat. Because the squat and the deadlift are more chaotic, more complex. So you've gone from an isolated, integrated element into, isolated then into integrate. So that's where PAPE and activation is very effective, right? And that mentality has gotten into football and field-based sports. Now, this is not me dissing it and saying that you can't do it. If it works for you and you're coming from an injury that needs or a muscle or group or area that requires more stability, then you should be practicing those activation exercises specific to you. But how I run it is I get my team to do that before that point, or I'll touch on it for like a couple minutes max. I don't waste half an hour. I only have half an hour of airtime or 20 minutes of airtime before the game. I'm not going to utilize an exercise intervention strategy that's not going to give me bang for buck. That's something that the athletes can do, and that's an individual thing that they can do. I'll touch on it, and then we move on into that graded process.
Well, Matty, you clearly are a highly educated individual. You definitely know what you're talking about. I think any team or any person that comes to you for training or for advice is definitely quite lucky. There aren't a lot of real wholesome guys out there, I find. Well, there are a lot, but they are increasingly hard to find. But just but before we finish off and you launch off to go get your girls all G'd up for the game, where can the viewers find you? You've got your nice polo.
So I do operate in the private space. So my business is Cabrera Performance Training. So you can find me on Instagram, on LinkedIn.
All of which will be all LinkedIn.
Yeah, all LinkedIn, if whoever has LinkedIn.
All linked into the description.
Yeah, all linked into the LinkedIn
in the bio.
In the bio.
Yes.
Linked in the bio.
LinkedIn.
So Instagram is probably the best thing you can, or you can send me an email. Look, I work with anyone that's looking to improve their physical performance for sport, for any competition, whether it's a Spartan race, whether it's a marathon, or even if you're just your everyday person that's wanting to improve your health and your overall fitness and just need guidance on how to train and exercise properly, then I also support individuals like that as well. So
Fantastic. Matty, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, mate.
You killed it. Me. No, you're welcome. I feel like you bloody did better than I did. But you are the man with the knowledge. And it's very, very good to be able to have on my show people here to be able to actually, with proper qualifications, instead of just me. I know a lot.
You do know a lot.
I do know a lot, and I've been through a lot, and I'd like to think I'm quite an educated guy. But having said that, though, you have the paper to prove it, and I don't. So it's good for you to be able to back up some of my my many things that I've gone through in my life. But having said that, though, beautiful, and good luck today.
Thank you.
I don't think...
Are you coming down?
I should be coming down. We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll be there. I'll be there. You'll hear me.
Yeah, good.
I'm trying to get a bit of one thing, I guess, before we launch off that I dislike about especially Manly is that the club itself is very dry.
Yeah, okay.
There isn't a lot of support there.
Yeah.
I try and get out there and chant to the girls and make up some cool songs about some of the players, and all the parents kind of look at you and scold you as if, what are you doing?
Yeah, okay.
And I just think, man, this is so lame. Whereas Tegan went to Italy and watched a women's game, I think Spezia versus another team, like a Serie B or Serie C game. And the crowd was going, Spezia, va un culo. And then they were all going back.
Yeah.
And then one of the little girls is like, avanti, mannaia, cazzo gisto. Like, which is Calabrese. They probably weren't saying that up in the north, but it was a women's game.
Yeah, amazing.
And then if I said to
Serie B or chair as well, that's...
And if I said at a Manly game, Tegan, move your ass, dropper. They'd be like, excuse me?
Yeah, I know
They're
what you're
just
saying.
women. I'll be
Yeah.
like, mate, I can't do with this anymore.
Maybe there's less passion here in Australian football.
There's way less passion. I'm going to bring a flare, actually. I'll bring a flare.
Yeah, bring a flare.
Having said that, after
Yeah.
this, if you're in Chroma and you see a flare, you know it was me. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next one, guys. Cut.